E-rank boy with useless skills becomes the strongest with godlike powers. The defense force are off the shore of an island, watching as a battle unfolds when one of the crew members asks the captain if it is really alright for them to not get involved or provide support for the people on the island. But the captain reminds him that they are nameless side characters, so the second they get too close to the action, they will be killed for plot development. It is best that they just leave the fighting up to the hunters on the island instead. And on that island, we see a man running through the brush of the forest while being chased by a monster of some sort. But this was all part of his plan, as he was simply leading it to his party so they can jump it. However, as the team ready themselves to jump whatever comes out of that forest, they are met with an army of ants and now have to fight one-on-one battles. Unfortunately, these guys have never had a fight where they didn't gang up on their opponent, so now that they have to have fair fights, their lack of skill is apparent. The swordsman gets bodied by one ant, while the mage squad completely fails to do any damage with their flame spells. They came with intentions of jumping the ants but got their asses jumped instead, and the last one standing has lost the will to fight. The leader of the team is laid out on the ground, slowly bleeding to death, and has no one to blame except himself for losing the battle. But before he can lose consciousness and become ant food, the ant on top of him gets knocked off by a new hunter who clearly knows what he is doing. This skilled hunter wastes no time and immediately pops a revive on the whole squad to save him from dying, but in doing so he leaves his back wide open for the ants to attack. However, he didn't come here alone and has his team members save him with a lightning strike. Meanwhile, another one of his teammates, Jin-woo, is busy manhandling the ants with nothing but his fists, and the lightning wielder soon joins in as backup. These are some of the few S-ranked hunters, and the gap between these guys and the average schmuck is so vast that no one even comes close to their level of strength. Once the two have taken care of most of the ants, they tell the healer Byung-gu that he went too far ahead of them, which is too reckless to be doing in a situation like this. He apologizes, but he needed to rush out to save these people as soon as possible, and besides, he had faith in their ability to keep him safe while he healed them. Soon after, a giant white ant appears, although it doesn't look like this is the boss. It is most likely the leader of the monsters here. So he leaves the injured people in the care of Byung-gu and tells Bunsak to join him in battle to take down this monster. They both charge forward and ready their weapons for an attack, so as the ant attacks Yuho first, he holds it in place while Unsak comes in from above and hits it with a lightning strike. While the ant is stunned from the shock, Yuho takes the opportunity to rip off its mandibles, enraging the ant and causing it to kick him away. But he wasn't done yet, as he uses those same mandibles as projectiles and launches them straight through the abdomen of the ant, killing it in one blow. However, they are far from done, since several more of those ants emerge from the forest, and Yuho is starting to get excited by the battle. He powers up and begins emanating purple energy, while Unsak does the same and releases a torrent of consecutive lightning strikes at the incoming horde. But while this is going on the other side of the city, there is another S-ranked hunter leading a team of side characters to stop the advancement of the ants. Once the average schmuck signals that everyone is ready, Choi unleashes a powerful fire blast that instantly roasts all the smaller ants, but the larger ones manage to make it through, so the cannon fodder must now engage in battle to hold them off. More than a decade ago, a portal that connects this world to many others opened, and various kinds of monsters and magical beasts began to invade. They soon realized that they were unable to do any damage with the weaponry they had, and they would have been at the mercy of the invaders if not for one thing. Humans began to awaken special abilities, and these people were called hunters. They are classified from a rank where we see all the really impressive hunters, all the way down to this loser in E rank. But once an ability is awakened, it can no longer be developed. 3 years have passed, and we see a construction site which has now become a dungeon raid site as a man grabs some breakfast before he heads in. One of his friends calls out to him as he eats, and he is surprised to see him there since he heard that Park quit being a hunter. That was true, but then he got backhanded by the economy after his wife got pregnant a second time, so he needs to earn a lot of money quick, and a dungeon raid would be perfect for it. They continue to catch up as we see the man himself, Jin-woo, the same loser that was at the bottom of the rankings. He greets everyone nervously as he enters, so Park asks why everyone seems to know who he is, wondering if he is some kind of really strong hunter, but it's actually the opposite. Jin-woo is regarded as the single weakest hunter that has ever existed. He even managed to get himself injured and hospitalized in an E-rank dungeon, so much so that they might as well create a new F rank just for him. So if his widely known weak status has become somewhat of a good sign whenever he is called in a dungeon raid, since it means it is probably going to be a really easy one. Jin-woo heard every word they just said about him, but it's not like they are wrong, since he really is just that weak. He gets called out by a woman called Juhi, and it seems Jin-woo knows her from a previous mission they had gone on together, but greetings aside, she is more worried about his newest set of injuries and asks him what could have happened this time. They sit down and Jin-woo explains the embarrassing fact that he got injured in the lowest ranked of the dungeons and the team didn't have a healer on hand because they thought it would be way too easy for any self-respecting hunter to ever get themselves injured, but they hadn't accounted for him, Jin-woo's existence. Jui gets mad on his behalf, but Jin-woo already knows that it wasn't their fault, it was his own for being so weak in the first place. The time to enter the dungeon has arrived and they are all about to enter the dungeon, so this man, Song-chi, suggests that he be out in the position of party leader for this expedition. No one is opposed to the idea, so he leads them all in, and before Jin-woo enters, he gets a friendly reminder to stick as close to the group as possible in order to not get hurt again. Jin-woo's only weapon is a small knife with very little magic power, and this is all of his meager earnings are able to afford him in the way of equipment, but he swears he will do his best regardless. Elsewhere, the president of a company is having a talk with his assistant. The demands from the public are as contradictory as ever. They demand that he finds a way to stop the dungeon breaks, but also want the items that are acquired from the dungeons, though it is not like he is in a position to complain about their requests since he makes his money by selling the items gotten from the dungeon. The crystals harvested from the corpses of magic beasts can be sold for money, but the process of gathering them is really bloody. Luckily, Jin-woo has managed to get one on his own for the first time. However, in his celebration over the money he will get after he sells this gem, he leaves himself wide open and has to be brought back to reality by a call from Jui, warning him of an incoming attack. Jin-woo manages to raise his knife in time to defend himself from the goblin's strike, but his knife merely breaks in the process. He barely manages to dodge the goblin's follow-up strikes, but as he tries to defend with his knife again, the cheap thing shatters and he ends up getting himself stabbed in the stomach. Jui wants to go help him, but Park tells him to stay back while he handles it, and even though he hasn't gone on a mission in a long time, he has still got it in him as he slashes the goblin to death in one strike. Jin-woo pulls the sword out of his stomach, which is not something a doctor would recommend, and Park tells him to recover while he takes care of the next magical beasts in his place. He asks Jui to heal Jin-woo while they've got the time, so she heads over to him and begins the process. She puts her hand over the gushing wound and starts healing him as a light gathers around her hands and Jin-woo seems to be recovering slightly. On the other side of the cave, Jin-woo can see the rest of the hunters actually doing their jobs, and he probably feels like shit both because of his injury and the injury to his pride after he promised himself that he would do well this time. We get a look at the top-of-the-line equipment and magic gems being sold in this world, all things that Jin-woo will never be able to enjoy in his lifetime. Mana crystals harvested from the dungeons can be used as weapons as well, but their effectiveness is inferior to that of magic gems. However, President Go has received a new government mandate that wants to use the mana crystals as a new form of energy production since it is safer than nuclear energy, but still more efficient than any other form of renewable energy that exists in their world, so it is the ideal source of energy. Thus, the government is researching methods to generate electricity from the use of magic gems and mana crystals, making hunters even more crucial to society at large. Meanwhile, in the dungeon, the party have just managed to take down a werewolf and are celebrating their victory over it, while Jin-woo is over in the corner getting healed up again, as he is the only one who managed to get seriously hurt. June was on his side earlier, but now, after seeing how badly he keeps getting injured in fights, she is starting to question why he even became a hunter in the first place. If this keeps up, he's going to end up with injuries that are too severe for her to treat at some point. He apologizes, but Jui isn't interested in his apology. Instead, she wants him to be more careful with himself in the future. Jin-woo looks over to the rest of the hunters and they are busy splitting up the loot according to the work that was done in battle. And if we're talking about team contributions, then Jin-woo did basically nothing for the entire fight. So after this whole mission, all he has to show for it is a single E-rank magic gem and a broken dagger which he spent his life savings on. He is starting to reconsider coming out here and risking his life just to make no money, but then one guy on the team calls everyone's attention to a huge hole, and they all gather around to figure out what this thing is. It looks like a cave, but they are in a dungeon, so it is much more likely that happens to be a double dungeon. It's rare, but they've heard of it before, and their hunch is confirmed by the fact that they've already killed the dungeon boss, yet it hasn't started closing like a regular dungeon would. It seems like there will be more profit to be made deeper in the dungeon, but Song-chi tries to be the voice of reason and tells everyone that normal protocol is to inform the association of the double dungeon and follow the instructions that they give afterwards. The team doesn't want to do that since it would basically mean that they give up the rights to all the untapped loot that is probably waiting for them down there. Then Park says the words that never lead to anything good. It's just an F-rank dungeon. What's the worst that could happen? And then his wife and child get brought up and how he needs to make more money and get back to them. Yeah, I'm calling it now, he's not making it back from this one. Song-chi understands the point they are trying to make, but he wants to listen to everyone's opinions before he makes a decision on the matter. The team members all speak up with a mix of approval of the plan to venture deeper and realization that this is a clear death flag. In total, there are 6 votes for going into the cave and 6 votes for going home. So someone needs to break that tie, and the only one left who hasn't voted is Jin-woo. The decision is left up to him, and while he is well aware that a D-rank dungeon is insanely dangerous for him to be in, with his father missing, he is the only one in his family that can earn any money, and he's already got a ton of financial burdens. His mother is in the hospital, and his sister still has to go to college, so he can't stay broke forever. After he makes the decision to go into the dungeon, we cut away to a lab where people are getting tested for their magical powers. And outside in the waiting room, associations are waiting, ready to sign on any promising new hunters. And this rank hunter, Choi, has told his people that regardless of age or gender, if there is a talented individual available to be recruited, then recruit them. Back in the dungeon, the party has been walking for 40 minutes now with no success in finding anything of value yet, and the portal to a dungeon closes after an hour since the dungeon boss was defeated. So that means they only have another 20 minutes before they run out of time altogether. Jin-woo apologizes to Joo-hee for making the decision to come down here when he knew she wanted to go back, but she isn't even mad about having to come down here. What she is mad about is that Jin-woo is still being such a reckless idiot with his body by deciding to come down into such a dangerous, unexplored dungeon, even though he was getting injured so badly earlier. That goblin stab could have been the end of him if she weren't around to heal him, and he realizes that now, so he gives it some serious thought. Joo-hee sees that Jin-woo is finally taking her safety concerns seriously, and that gets her to calm down a bit. But to make it up to her, she wants Jin-woo to get dinner with her after this, and Jin-woo gets flustered. But before he can give an answer, the party arrives at the boss room. They enter, and I'm sure you are all familiar with this room with the giant statues. They are at a loss for what they are supposed to do here, but find some writing on the walls. While it is being read by Song-chi, Joo-hee gets freaked out because she's pretty sure the eyes of the statue just moved. The doors to the room suddenly slam shut, and one member of the team who didn't want to come in the first place recognizes that something is wrong and tries to leave. But his exit is cut short as he is cut in half by one of the guard statues. Everyone starts freaking out because not only did someone just die, he was taken out in an instant with power that none of them can handle. Jin-woo looks back to the main statue, hoping that it doesn't move as well, but to his horror, it looks back at him. Jin-woo has lived through enough near-death experiences to know that this is one of them, so he yells for everyone to get down before it is too late. The giant statue unleashes a death ray that Jin-woo just barely managed to evade along with Joo-hee, but many others aren't so lucky and end up charred. Yet even if he got lucky this time, Jin-woo is sure that he will be killed sooner or later. The people panic and instinctually feel like they should run away, but from what they have seen happen so far, they are sure that they will be killed the second they move. Song yells out for everyone to stay exactly where they are, and Jin-woo checks on Joo-hee, who is thankfully still in one piece, but unconscious for the moment. Song thanks Jin-woo for his earlier warning when he shouted for everyone to get down since it saved them all. But it's not like he knew what was going to happen or anything. All he knew was that it was going to be bad. Jin-woo soon notices that Song didn't manage to escape that attack unharmed and has a lot of bleeding from his arm because his arm is just gone. He says he can bear the pain for now, but asks Jin-woo to help him stop the bleeding for now. Normally, he would have asked Joo-hee to treat him since she is the healer here, but no offense, she's kind of a wimp when it comes to seriously dangerous situations, so she's curled up in the fetal position over there. That is the reason that she only ever goes on low-level raids despite being a B-ranked healer. Personally, Song has been on a few B-ranked missions, and he can say with certainty that this thing is way above B rank. It might be A or even S for that matter, so they have no chance of beating it. He recalls the writing on the wall which said all who enter must worship the god, then praise the god and believe in the god. Those who fail to do this will not leave alive, so Jin-woo deduces that the god in question must be that statue. There is no way that the statue sees them as its opponent since it isn't attacking them, so Song suggests that they just wait out the worst of it and look for an opening to escape. But not everyone is on board with this plan. This guy isn't going to sit around and just wait to be killed. His life was going too well for him to let it end now. He finally signed a contract with a good association, and he even got the new Jordans on sale, so no matter what, he's going to make it out of here. The dude charges up and dashes away, and it seems like he's going to. Oh, never mind. Well, at least the Jordans are okay, but I can't say the same for the rest of the guy. For the others that didn't move, that display just cemented the fact that this thing could easily kill them all if it wanted to. It is just choosing not to do so for some reason right now. But the question is why? Why hasn't it killed them yet if it has the power to do so to anything? Choosing not to attack makes it different from the other magical beasts that exist inside the dungeons, so Jin-woo thinks back to the first command on the wall of this room which said to worship the god. But to know if his theory is right, there is something he needs to check first, so he begins to stand up despite knowing it is dangerous. Song tries to stop him, but Jin-woo's eyes show that he is determined to make it through this alive. He slowly rises to his feet, and as he does this, the eyes of the statue begin to glow as it is about to fire its laser beam at him. Jin-woo immediately ducks back into a crouching position, and as he does, the statue's eyes stop glowing. This confirms his theory, so he yells out to everyone that they must bow to the statue. They don't understand what he means by that, but from what he has seen so far, the statue only attacks if your head is past a certain height, so if you keep your head low to the ground, you'll be safe from it. That is probably what the first command on the wall meant when it said to worship the god. Jin-woo bows his head to the statue, and with no better options, everyone follows his lead, hoping that his plan actually works. Jin-woo was correct in his assumption as the eyes of the statue stopped glowing altogether, but then you see, that's where the real trouble began. That smile. That damned smile. Park is creeped out by the statue's face, but seeing that its expression changed, he decides to take a leap of faith and stand up to see if anything happens when he does, and surprisingly, there are no death beams shot his way, so believes they have cleared the challenge and are free to go home. But just as everyone was celebrating their survival, the second health bar popped up and the statue started moving again. And this time it gets up from its chair, so they are even more panicked than before. Song turns to Jin-woo and asks if he has any more ideas to help them get through this, but he doesn't have an instruction manual on this kind of thing. The best he can think of is the second command that said to praise the god, so they must need to praise it in order to stop it from attacking. One man from the back steps up and tells everyone that he has studied traditional folklore, so he knows how to praise God. He gets down on his knees and starts praying to the statue while everyone stands back and waits to see if the statue reacts to his praise. The statue definitely reacted, but instead of stopping its attack, it gave the guy the rumbling treatment and turned him into a puddle. One of the girls can't handle the gore she has just witnessed, so her knees give out and she falls to the floor, only to become the statue's next victim as it stomps her into pace as well. Song yells for everyone to scatter as fast as they can so that the statue can't get them all in one stomp. So they all begin running and Jin-woo grabs Joo-hee, who is still frozen in fear. Park is running for his life and thinking that he can't let himself die here, but let's be real, as soon as he started talking about his pregnant wife and kid, we knew he wasn't making it out of this alive. He runs over to one corner of the room and tells everyone that it should be safe over here, but he had forgotten about the smaller statue guards that were there and that they can attack as well. So before Song can warn him, Park gets his body split in two, and I don't think he's going to get to see his wife again. Jin-woo continues to run across the room while wondering what exactly the command to praise it was talking about. There isn't exactly much to praise about that thing in the first place, but Jin-woo has to figure it out because he got Joo-hee into this mess and has to find a way to get her back out alive. He looks to the edge of the room and the statues that are all lined up against the wall. One wields a spear, another with an axe, and various other weapons which could easily kill them. But then there is one with a trumpet, and it seems like the safest option, so Jin-woo yells for Song to go stand under the statue with a musical instrument, and as he does, it doesn't try to kill him and just starts playing music instead. He yells for the others to get to the statues that are holding musical instruments, and as they do, the statues begin playing and they seem to be safe. Jin-woo drags Joo-hee over to a statue with a drum, but doesn't start playing immediately, so thinking quickly, he guesses that two people aren't allowed to stay under the same statue, so he tells Joo-hee to stay here while he runs to get to another statue. As he runs off, Joo-hee is left standing alone under the drum statue, and it begins to play, but as Jin-woo is running, the giant statue begins to chase after him and is inching closer with each colossal step. Jin-woo has the final musical statue in his sight, but the giant statue has its foot over his head, so he is moments away from becoming human jam. Luckily, as the foot came down, Jin-woo got out of the way and managed to save himself from being squished by Dark Soul's rolling, but in his haste, he had rolled into the statue holding a shield, and this one was going to attack, so before he knew it, he found himself with a shield being brought down upon him. A dust cloud is kicked up and Joo-hee screams out in tears, believing that Jin-woo has just died, but it's not over yet, and as long as there is still breath in his lungs, Jin-woo will continue to push forward even if he has to crawl. The giant raises its foot once more to squash him, but luckily, Jin-woo managed to make it to the last musical statue while narrowly missing the giant's step, and as he does, the giant stops chasing after him and returns to its seat. Joo-hee runs over to Jin-woo's side to check if he is alright, and he says he is fine and I'm no doctor, but it looks like you're missing a leg there. Jin-woo hadn't even realized he lost his leg due to the adrenaline coursing through his veins, so Joo-hee tries to heal him, but with all the healing she's been doing today, it is starting to take its toll on her, so Jin-woo tells her to stop. She remains determined to heal him while the others assess the situation they are in now. It looks like it is finally over, So the survivors start blaming Song for agreeing to come down here even though half of them voted to come here. But now isn't the time to be playing the blame game since there is still one command left to be followed. The giant statue raises its hand and an altar appears in the center of the room. The rest of the group is confused when they see it, but Jin-woo correctly identifies it and says it is commonly used in mythology to offer living sacrifices to God. The final command is to believe in God, so it is pretty clear what they are supposed to do here, and Kim wastes no time in telling Song to go offer himself as a sacrifice because they all blame him for bringing them down here. Song doesn't fight it and agrees to go and have himself offered, but he says he wants to go alone in case it might be dangerous for them. As Song walks to his death, Jin-woo thinks about how this isn't entirely his fault since the group voted to come down here, and moreover, Jin-woo was the one who had the deciding vote. As Song walked into the altar, a flame was ignited, but he was still alive. He doesn't know what he is supposed to be doing, so he asks if there is anything else that is needed. Jin-woo asks two of the other people with him to help him up so he can go check the altar, but he assures them that it is safe since nothing happened to Song. The two agree to help him get there, and as they enter the altar, more flames are ignited. Song asks if Jin-woo has any idea what this is supposed to mean, but he doesn't have a definite answer yet. If they wait here, then they may eventually be rescued. But this is the 7th day since this dungeon was opened, meaning that it will soon become a dungeon break and the magical beasts from within this dungeon will be able to pass through and enter the human world. This is why people try to clear a dungeon boss before the time limit is up, so if they fail here, then that giant statue will be able to enter their world and cause untold mayhem. For now, they need to see what happens next, so Jin-woo asks the others to come into the altar so they can move on with clearing this test. They agree, and as they all enter, flames ignite on all sides of the altar and another ring of blue flames forms around it. This causes the door to open, but it also makes the weapon-wielding statues begin to move. Jin-woo notices that these statues do not move as long as you are looking at them, so he asks everyone to keep their eyes on the statues. However, this one girl has had enough and throws everyone under the no bus to save herself as she sprints out the door. It may seem selfish, but she did manage to make it out, so the others start to think there is hope of escaping. Jin-woo, on the other hand, isn't fooled. The boss music hasn't stopped playing yet, so that open door has to be a trap. The first command was to worship, then it was to praise, no, the third one is to believe, so it must mean they have to stay here until the timer of the blue flames runs out, and if that is the case, the open door is only there to tempt them into leaving the circle. Jin-woo tries to tell the others that they need to stay here so they can keep the statues from closing in, but they had already had their wills broken by this dungeon, so when an escape route has presented itself, there is no way they would be willing to stay. Kim tells Jin-woo that he is incredibly thankful to Jin-woo because it is all thanks to him that they have managed to survive this long. But he has had enough of this, and just wants to go back home and see his wife, so he's going to leave through the door. The only ones left are Jin-woo, Judy, and Song, and Jin-woo is struggling to keep his eyes on all the statues at once, so they keep inching closer and closer, and he is starting to think he might have been wrong about the objective. Song speaks up and says that he wants Judy and Jin-woo to leave through that door. He believes that the door won't close as long as one person remains on the altar, so he wants them to escape since they are still young and have their whole futures ahead of themselves. However, Jin-woo has lost a leg and Judy has lost all strength in her legs, so there is no way the two of them will be able to make it out together. Thus, Jin-woo asks Song to take Judy and get her to safety while he stays behind. Song agrees to his request, and though Judy was against it, Song knocks her out and takes her to presumed safety as Jin-woo wanted. Jin-woo is okay with how things ended. The only regret he has is that if he had known things would end like this, then he would have taken out more life insurance. The armed statues close in on him and begin to attack, severing an arm and leaving him at death's door, and Jin-woo can do nothing but wish he were strong enough to fight back against these things. He had his own dreams, his aspirations in life, so why does he have to die here? He gets stabbed through the chest and thrown onto the altar as the statue prepares to finish him off with its sword, and Jin-woo, completely powerless to do anything, just sits there and awaits death. But as the sword comes down on him and ends his life, a timer countdown ends and a status screen appears before Jin-woo. It's a quest, and it says that he will die if he doesn't accept it, so him not wanting to die yet, we see him accept. Jin-woo wakes up startled in a hospital bed as he looks down and realizes that his hand and foot are still attached to his body somehow. Not only that, but the stab wound in his chest is also gone, so he begins to wonder what happened. He thinks the whole thing might have been a dream because he knows his insurance wouldn't cover healing treatment, and with how often he gets injured, his premiums already cost an arm and a leg anyway. Just then, these two men in suits enter the room and introduce themselves as people from the Association Surveillance Unit, and they would like to have a word with him. Jin-woo is informed that he has been unconscious for 3 days now, So he asks about the condition of the others, so the men tell him that Song is still alive and well, but he lost an arm in the dungeon, so he may be unable to continue his expeditions in future. And as for Jui, she is suffering severe psychological damage, and I don't blame her since all that happened and she didn't even want to be there in the first place. Only 6 people made it out of the dungeon alive, and while it is true that hunters sign up for the job knowing the dangers, casualties like this almost never happen. Yet, when another hunter team was sent in, all they found was Jin-woo laying there unharmed and no temple or statue to speak of. Normally, if the stories of the survivors had any inconsistencies or if there weren't corpses all over the area, they may have been suspicious of Jin-woo, but with things as they are, they speculate that Jin-woo may have had a reawakening in the dungeon. Usually, a hunter's abilities are set from the moment they awaken their powers, but on some rare occasions, hunters have a reawakening and surpass their limits, becoming A or even S rank at times. Jin-woo is starting to get excited at the prospect that he is one of those cases, and the men place a magic measuring device in front of him to confirm if their speculations are correct. The surveillance team believe that if what the survivors reported is to be believed, then those monsters that killed people with ease could easily be S rank, so there should have been no way that the lowest of all hunters could survive against them. The monsters also disappear altogether, so there's a chance Jin-woo may have become an incredibly powerful hunter due to his experience in the dungeon. However, as they measure his magic, the score only comes out to a 10. 10 out of what? I don't know, but I know no Asian family would be happy with that score. Jin-woo was all excited, thinking he was about to have his main character moment, but the suit guys just looked disappointed that they wasted their time on such a pointless endeavor. They immediately leave, but they are still astonished by how trash Jin-woo is compared to a regular hunter. Even a baseline E-rank hunter would be able to average a 69 on the magic test, but if he is so weak, then how on earth did he manage to survive in there? Jin-woo is disappointed by the news that he still isn't special yet, but he can't help but wonder why the 2 suit guys didn't bother asking him anything about that floating screen right in front of his face. It seems like something they may be interested in talking about, but then again, he may be the only who can see it. This means one of 2 things: either he has gone crazy, or he is special now. He plays around with the screen to see if he can learn anything useful about it, but then he gets a flashback to the moment in the dungeon when he saw this exact same screen pop up. His sister soon comes into the room, relieved to see her brother is still in one piece, but annoyed at the same time that he keeps putting himself in such great danger. As she is yelling at him, all Jin-woo can think about is how grateful he is that he gets to see his wonderful sister's cute face again. He apologizes for making her worry so much, then asks her if she can see the screen in front of him, but she can't and wonders if he might have some brain damage. Jin-woo brushes it off and starts asking her about what one would usually do if they wanted to read a message. She finds the question odd but tells him he would just need to open the message box, and as he does this, he sees something pop up on his screen, telling him to begin his training. Jin-woo seems to be fine. A little odd but fine, so Jina leaves him for the meantime and goes to meet her friend who has been waiting this entire time. Once she is gone, Jin-woo begins looking through the windows and learns that this screen is a system designed to help players develop their skills, but if you fail to do what the system requires of you, then a penalty will be issued. Jin-woo doesn't understand any of it, so he just accepts the quest of daily strength training to see what happens. The strength training is enough to make a man go bald, but Jin-woo doesn't take it seriously since he is still hospitalized, and there is no way he would be able to do 100 push-ups, sit-ups, and squats in a single day, or run 10 kilometers. So he just decides to ignore it and go to sleep while the timer keeps ticking away. On the streets, the 2 suits give their report to President about Jin-woo still being a loser, but that still leaves the question of what happened in that dungeon and who cleared it. This is going to have to be investigated further, so the surveillance team is going to be having a long day dealing with this. Meanwhile, a promising new hunter, Miss Cha, is being given the opportunity to participate in the next B-rank dungeon raid as an instructor. She isn't too confident in her ability to teach others how to not suck at their job, but she is assured that all she needs to do is showcase her amazing skills and the others will learn from her example as she goes. Their hunter guild may be one of the best in Korea, but when it comes to the international hunting scene, they are koi fish in a pond of sharks, and while it is impossible to raise the rank of an individual, it is possible to train as a group and hone the guild's compatibility so they will be ready for any new threats. At that very moment, a new gate appears right in the middle of the road, and now hunters have to be called in to handle it. Meanwhile, Jin-woo is in his history bed, sleeping really well and ignoring the calls to go to the gym, when all of a sudden, his screen pops up and shows that he has failed his One Punch Man training quest, so a penalty will be issued. But when you think of a penalty, you may think of losing some points or being put on probation, but Jin-woo just gets chucked into a desert. Good luck, buddy. While he is still trying to figure out what just happened to him, this giant worm comes up behind him, and his new goal is to just survive for 4 hours while this thing tries to kill him. Back in the hospital room, a nurse has just realized that Jin-woo has gone missing from his room, and it is usually bad if a hospital loses a patient, so they start looking for him. Meanwhile, Jin-woo has been running for his life in this desert full of sandworms, and I'm honestly surprised he has managed to last this long against them. His 4 hours are almost up, but he is running out of steam really quickly, so he doesn't know if he can handle any more of this. The timer counts down to 0 and Jin-woo is returned to his hospital room looking like a man who just ran for 4 hours straight, but he has managed to clear his penalty quest and survive, so he's at least got that going for him. Some time passes and Jin-woo isn't going to make the same mistake again, so early that morning, he puts on a tracksuit and heads out to start his running. Meanwhile, Ju-yoo is just contacted about that ranked dungeon gate that spawned in the middle of the street, but she still isn't willing to go on anything dungeon raids after what happened last time, and the guy calling her understands that she has been through a lot, so he tells her it is fine if she doesn't want to go. To cheer her up a little, the guy tells her that he heard that Jin-woo has woken up in the hospital, and that does put a smile on her face. Later that day, she goes over to the hospital to check up on Jin-woo, but she is a bit hesitant because while she didn't want to, she did end up leaving Jin-woo there to die. In the hall, she overhears some nurses talking about Jin-woo and how he's been going out and running ever since that day he went missing for 4 hours. They know hunters are able to heal faster than most people, but he was in a coma a few days ago. He said something about wanting to get back in shape, and hearing how hard he is working on himself, Ju-hee becomes apprehensive and walks away. On the hospital grounds, Jin-woo has completed his 10K run for the day and takes a seat on a nearby bench to rest. And it's been 4 days since Jin-woo woke up, and he has learned a few things since then. First, the screen he is seeing is actually real, so he isn't crazy, and 2, the quests are not to be taken lightly, but once it is completed, he receives 3 kinds of rewards. He is able to recover instantly from all the fatigue he got from his running, and he is given ability points which he is able to distribute to any one of his stats. For instance, adding points to his strength literally makes him feel stronger instantly. He has also got a skill and inventory window, but remember, no one else can see any of this, so to them, he's pretty much crazy. Finally, the last reward he receives is a random loot box, but it just keeps giving him useless junk. However, this time he gets a key and its description says it can be used to teleport into an instance dungeon. He isn't sure what an instance dungeon is, but from what has happened so far, he can tell that it is going to be dangerous, and it will probably help him get stronger. 4 years ago, his mother was diagnosed with a sickness called external sleep disease. It was thought to be caused by an excessive exposure to mana, but the best modern medicine can do is keeping her alive for a little while longer. Even back then, insurance was hella expensive, so Jin-woo started a job as a construction worker to pay for the treatment. But then one day he felt something strange and discovered that he had awakened as a hunter, even if he was a shitty one. Being a hunter made it easier to pay for his mother's treatment, so he stuck with it despite being absolutely doo-doo butter at it, but now has a chance to actually become strong, and there is no way he is going to pass up on something like this. He heads to the location of the instance dungeon and takes out the key to head in. So as he puts the key in the lock, a doorway opens and he is allowed entry. He steps into the stairway and the entrance seals up behind him, so Jin-woo begins to worry that this might be a situation like what happened in the double dungeon. It seems like he is in a separate dimension, so he has no choice but to clear the dungeon if he wants to be able to get out of here. He was getting his ass beat by a goblin last week, and now he has to clear a dungeon by himself. He isn't confident he can do it, but he's stuck here until he does, so he has to try. As he walks through the dungeon, he gets jumped by 3 goblins, but this time, he has the power of character development on his side, so although he struggles a bit, he is able to eventually take down the goblins one by one. He can tell that he has gotten stronger, but goblins aren't the only thing he has to worry about as a wolf jumps out from behind him and shatters his knife. His legs are quaking from fear, but he can't afford to let himself get injured too badly, because there is no healer here to save his ass, but how will he manage to deal with this wolf? This was the end of episode 3. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to not miss the next part.